When my son's wife laughed at my phone, I told myself to let it go. But that laughter, it stayed with me longer than it should have. You see, there are some kinds of laughter that don't come from joy, they come from contempt, from the place inside someone that believes they're better than you. And that day, as I sat at my own kitchen table, the same table I'd raised my boy at, my daughter-in-law, Jasmine, threw her head back and laughed at my old, cracked screen phone as if she'd handed her a relic from a museum. "Oh, Ma," she said, wiping the corner of her eye from laughter. "I didn't even know people still used phones like this. Does it even connect to Wi-Fi?" My cheeks burned. I forced a smile. "It does what I need it to," I said softly. She chuckled again, sliding her shiny new iPhone across the table, the one that sparkled in its gold case. "You should really let me convince Daniel to get you an upgrade. It's embarrassing for him, you know?" Her words cut deeper than I let show. Embarrassing for him, as if my son's image mattered more than my dignity. Daniel, my only child, sat quietly, eyes on his plate. He didn't defend me. He didn't even look up. Just chewed, swallowed, and said, "Jazz, that's enough," in a voice so low it barely had meaning. That silence, his silence, hurt more than her laughter. I thought about that moment later that night, sitting in my armchair while the clock ticked against the soft hum of the fridge. My phone, the embarrassing little thing, lay on the coffee table beside me. It was a simple phone, maybe outdated, but it held memories, photos of Daniel's childhood, voicemails from my late husband, notes, reminders, recipes, my life. And to her, that was something to mock. I should have let it slide. I really should have. But that night, something stirred inside me, a quiet unease that whispered, "She doesn't respect you, Marie, and she doesn't respect him either." Daniel had always been a good boy. Not perfect, but kind, hardworking, the sort of son any mother would be proud of. After his father passed 5 years ago, he'd stepped up in ways that melted my heart, checking in, paying my bills when I didn't ask him to, mowing the lawn every Sunday, even after he got married. When he told me he'd met someone, Jasmine, I was happy for him. She was beautiful, ambitious, and sharp-tongued in a way that made people laugh. At first, I liked her confidence. It reminded me of my younger self before life softened my edges. But soon after they married, I began to notice the small things. The way she'd roll her eyes when I spoke, the way she'd correct me mid-sentence, or tell Daniel, "Your mom's so old-fashioned." She said it playfully, but the words always stung. Still, I tried. I'd invite them over for dinner once a week. I'd cook Jasmine's favorites, pasta with creamy mushroom sauce or roasted salmon with dill, because I wanted her to feel at home. I even gave her one of my gold bangles on her first birthday after marriage. Family should share blessings, I'd said. She'd smiled politely and slipped it into her bag without even trying it on. It was little things like that, subtle but sharp, that told me we weren't close. But Daniel was happy, or so I believed. He'd come by less often after they moved across town, saying work kept him busy. I missed him, but I understood. That's what happens when your child builds his own life. You learn to love him from a distance. Until that afternoon with the phone. They had come over because Jasmine needed help. She dropped her own phone in water, and Daniel thought I might have an old spare lying around. I did, the same one she laughed at. I'd planned to let her borrow it for a few days, thinking it might help. But after that comment, well, pride made me hold on to it. When they left that day, I noticed Jasmine's tone shift suddenly. She was restless, distracted, checking her watch every few minutes. I asked if everything was okay, and she smiled too quickly. Oh, just work stuff, nothing important. But something about that answer and the way Daniel looked away didn't sit right. That was the first time I felt it, the faint crack in the glass of their perfect picture. A week later, Daniel stopped by alone. It had been a while since I'd seen him without Jasmine. He looked tired. Dark circles under his eyes, a shadow of stubble he used to keep neatly trimmed. I made him coffee, the way he liked it. Strong, no sugar. We sat in silence for a moment before he sighed. "Jazz got a new phone," he said, half smiling. "So that crisis is over." I chuckled softly. "Good for her. I'm sure she's happier now." He didn't answer, just stared into his cup. Then he changed the subject, asked how I was doing, if I needed anything. But his questions felt mechanical, like he was reading from a list, not speaking from his heart. When he left, I noticed something odd. On the chair where he'd been sitting was Jasmine's new phone, sleek, gold, with that same glittery case. She must have left it in his car, and he carried it in without realizing. I picked it up, meaning to call him back right away, but the screen lit up. A notification popped up at the top. It was from a man named Evan. The preview read, "Can't stop thinking about last night. Wish she didn't suspect." I froze. My heart began to pound so loud it filled the room. My first instinct was disbelief. Maybe it was nothing, a misunderstanding, an old friend, a joke. I set the phone down, my hands trembling, and told myself to mind my business. Don't go looking for pain, Marie. You'll find it. But curiosity has a way of clawing through reason. That night, as I sat alone again with the ticking clock and my cold cup of tea, my thoughts wouldn't stop racing. The words replayed in my mind like a song I couldn't unhear. Wish she didn't suspect. Who was she? Me? Daniel? Someone else? I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. The next morning, I decided I'd return the phone to her face to face. Maybe I'd get a sense of truth just by looking in her eyes. When Jasmine opened the door, her face lit up too quickly. "Oh, you found it! I've been looking everywhere." She snatched it from my hand, thanked me, and shut the door faster than I expected. I stood there for a moment, stunned. No offer to come in, no warmth, no conversation. Just a closed door. Something inside me whispered that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And I was right, because what that phone held, what I would eventually discover, would change everything between us. Between me and my son, between mother and daughter-in-law, and it would all start with that same old phone she laughed at. Over the next few days, I tried to shake it off. Truly, I did. I told myself I was imagining things, that maybe Evan was just a coworker or a friend from before Jasmine married Daniel. But there are some feelings a mother can't ignore. Not about her own child, not when something feels wrong in the home he's built. The tension began to creep into every conversation. When Daniel called, his voice carried an unfamiliar edge, distracted, impatient. When I asked about Jasmine, he'd changed the subject quickly. One evening, he came by again, but this time he looked worse. Eyes red, lips pressed tight, hands trembling as he held his coffee mug. I reached across the table and touched his wrist. "Danny," I said softly, "is everything all right between you two?" He paused too long. Then he forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, Ma, just work stress. She's been busy lately. We're both tired." "Busy?" I asked. "Busy with what?" "Her company's got a new client," he said quickly, then stood up to rinse his mug before I could press further. "I should get going. Jazz hates when I'm late for dinner." His words were simple, but the tone was sharp, defensive, nervous. I didn't push. I'd learned long ago that when someone's hiding something, confrontation makes them bury it deeper. But in my heart, I already knew something was unraveling in my son's marriage, and whatever it was, Jasmine was at the center of it. A few nights later, I received a call around 9 p.m. It was Daniel. His voice was tired but calm. "Ma, can you do me a favor? Jasmine's heading to your side of town tomorrow. She's got some work thing nearby. She might drop by to leave her phone for a bit, something about syncing her files. Just keep it safe till she picks it up. I agreed, though I didn't understand why she needed me to hold her phone. But the next day, around noon, Jasmine arrived, dressed in a sleek beige blazer, hair tied neatly, a sweet smile plastered on her face. "Hi, Ma," she chirped. "Daniel said I could leave this here. My cloud storage is acting up. I'll just log out and fix it later, okay?" I nodded, pretending not to notice how she wouldn't meet my eyes. She set the phone on the table, thanked me politely, and left in a rush, heels clicking across the tiles like she was running from something. The moment the door closed, silence filled the house again. I stood there, staring at that phone. It wasn't just curiosity now, it was concern. My son's marriage was cracking before my eyes, and I couldn't bear to watch him crumble without understanding why. I told myself I'd just check the notifications. Nothing invasive, just enough to see if my suspicions had any weight. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The phone wasn't locked. My breath caught in my throat. The screen opened instantly, like it had been waiting for me. The first thing I saw was a wallpaper, a photo of Jasmine and Daniel, smiling at the beach. A perfect couple, at least on the surface. But the second thing I saw was a text bubble popping up from that same contact. "Evan, can't wait to see you tonight. Same hotel? Missed your voice. You looked stunning yesterday. He doesn't deserve you." My stomach twisted. I scrolled up. Message after message. Pictures, flirty emojis, voice notes, and then one that broke me entirely. "Daniel still thinks I'm at the conference. If only he knew I'd rather spend my nights with you." I felt my knees go weak. I sat down, gripping the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. The air felt heavy, like it had thickened with every lie I was reading. I wanted to stop, I really did, but the truth has a cruel way of demanding to be seen once it starts showing itself. There were hotel receipts in her email, photos sent late at night, ones no decent woman would share with anyone other than her husband. And the timestamps? They matched nights Daniel had told me she was working late. For a long moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. All I could see was my son's face, his tired eyes, his forced smile, his quiet sadness when I asked if he was okay. He knew, at least part of him did, and I'd failed to see it. I placed the phone down gently, as if afraid to break it. Then I just sat there, staring at it, tears blurring my vision. The woman who had laughed at my old phone, who mocked me for living simply, for being behind the times, had used hers to hide the ugliest kind of deceit. There was irony in that, I suppose, but in that moment, it didn't feel satisfying. It felt tragic. I thought about confronting her right then, calling Daniel, exposing it all. But something inside me told me to wait, to think. My son was already fragile. The wrong move could destroy him completely. So I decided I would act carefully, patiently, like a mother protecting her child from a storm. That evening, when Jasmine returned, I handed her the phone as calmly as I could. "There you go," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was racing. She smiled too brightly. "Thank you, Ma. You're a lifesaver." As she turned to leave, I said quietly, "Jasmine?" She paused, hand on the doorknob. "Yes?" I looked straight into her eyes. "Be careful what you hide on that thing. You never know who might find it." Her smile faltered, just for a second, before she composed herself. "Excuse me?" "Nothing," I said softly. "Just a thought." She laughed nervously and left, but I saw the stiffness in her shoulders as she walked away. That was the moment I knew. She realized I had seen something, and now it was only a matter of time before everything came undone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, the streetlight casting pale shadows across my hands. I thought about Daniel's childhood, about how I used to protect him from bullies, from heartbreak, from disappointment. But this was a different kind of pain. The kind a mother can't fix with a hug or a warm meal. The kind that breaks a man's spirit, quietly, from within. I decided that night I wouldn't let her destroy him. Not with lies, not with her deceit, and certainly not with that smile she wore like a mask. The next day, I made a plan. If Jasmine wanted to mock my old phone, maybe it was time that very same phone taught her a lesson she'd never forget. I woke up the next morning with a strange calm, the kind that comes when pain settles into purpose. The decision had been made in my heart before I even opened my eyes. If Jasmine wanted to play games in the dark, I was going to bring her deceit into the light. But not with anger, not with shouting or chaos. I would let the truth reveal itself naturally, the way the morning sun exposes every hidden corner. I started by charging my old phone, the same one she'd laughed at, the same one she called embarrassing. Its cracked screen flickered to life, slowly, like an old friend waking from a nap. I smiled faintly. "You and I whispered to it, "we've got work to do." I wasn't tech-savvy, but I knew enough. I transferred some of the screenshots from Jasmine's messages, the incriminating ones, into my phone through email, evidence if ever I needed it. I didn't want to destroy her outright. I just wanted Daniel to see the truth with his own eyes so he could decide for himself. Because no matter how much pain this brought me, this wasn't about revenge. It was about protection. The next few days I stayed quiet. I cooked, cleaned, went to church, and went about life as if nothing had changed. But inside, I was watching closely. Jasmine didn't call. Daniel didn't visit. Then, on Friday, I received a text from Daniel. "Ma, Jasmine wants to invite you for dinner tomorrow. She said she's sorry about how she spoke last time, wants to make peace." I stared at the message for a long time. Peace? It was strange, almost too convenient. The timing made my stomach twist. I replied, "Of course, I'd love to come. If she wanted to put on a show, I would sit front row, quietly, patiently, and ready." The next evening, I put on my best blue sari, the one Daniel's father used to say made my eyes look kind. I arrived at their apartment right on time. Jasmine opened the door, smiling wide, her lipstick perfect, her tone sugary sweet. "Ma, you look beautiful. Come in, come in." The dining table was set beautifully. Candles, wine glasses, and a roast chicken that smelled divine. Everything looked too perfect. Daniel came out from the kitchen, smiling faintly. "Hey, Ma, glad you came." He hugged me gently, but I felt the weight in his shoulders. Something about his embrace felt strained. As we sat down, Jasmine poured me a glass of wine. "I wanted to apologize, Ma," she began, her voice soft and rehearsed. "I didn't mean to make you feel bad about your phone. I was just joking, you know. Sometimes I say silly things." I smiled back, my tone even. "Oh, I know, dear. You didn't mean any harm." For a moment, she looked relieved. But then I added softly, "Though it's funny how the very thing you laughed at turned out to be more honest than yours." Her smile froze on her lips. "Excuse me?" Daniel frowned, confused. "What's going on?" I set my fork down gently. "Just something I've been thinking about. How sometimes the things we mock end up holding our biggest lessons." Jasmine shifted in her seat. "I don't understand what you mean." Her voice cracked just slightly, just enough for Daniel to notice. He looked between us, suspicion rising in his eyes. "Ma,
he said slowly. What are you talking about? I took a breath. I'm talking about the messages, Daniel. The ones on Jasmine's phone. The ones from a man named Evan. Silence. The sound of the clock ticking filled the room. Daniel's face went pale. Jasmine froze completely, eyes wide, lips parting, but no words came out. What messages? Daniel finally asked, his voice trembling. I looked at him gently. The ones where she said she'd rather spend her nights with someone else. I didn't mean to find them, Daniel, but I did, and I couldn't let you keep living blind to the truth. He turned to Jasmine, disbelief etched across his face. Jazz, tell me she's lying. Jasmine stammered, her voice shaking. Daniel, it's not what you think. He's just a friend. We were talking about work and... Work? I said quietly. Do you send photos like those for work? Her face drained of color. Daniel slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing through the room. Jasmine, he shouted, tell me the truth. Tears filled her eyes, but they didn't look like guilt. They looked like fear. It was a mistake, she whispered. It didn't mean anything. I stayed silent, letting the air fill with the weight of her confession. Daniel stood up, pacing, his voice breaking. How long? Daniel, please, she begged. How long? Her lips trembled. 6 months. He turned away, covering his face. The silence that followed was deafening, heavy, suffocating. I wanted to hold him, but I knew this was a moment he needed to face alone. Finally, Jasmine looked at me with sudden anger. You had no right to go through my phone.
I met her glare steadily. And you had no right to betray my son. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked small. Not powerful, not glamorous, just human. Daniel walked out onto the balcony, his hands shaking. I followed him quietly. He didn't say anything for a long time. The city lights flickered below us, and the night air was cool. I thought she loved me, he finally said. She did, I said softly. In her own way. But love without respect doesn't last. He nodded slowly, tears glistening in his eyes. I should have known. She was always so distant lately. It's not your fault, Daniel. You trusted her. That's what good men do. He turned to me then, his voice low. What do I do now, Ma? I looked out into the night. You face the truth, son. And you decide whether you want peace or punishment. But whatever you choose, make sure it's for your healing, not her destruction. He nodded, and for a moment, I saw the boy he used to be. Lost, scared, but still my son. Behind us, Jasmine stood at the doorway, mascara streaked, silent. The truth was out now, and soon the whole world would know. Because when lies unravel, they don't stop at one thread. They pull apart everything. The following days felt like walking through the aftermath of a storm. The air was heavy, the silence thick, and everything that once stood firm between Daniel and Jasmine now lay in emotional ruins. Daniel moved into my house temporarily. He didn't bring much, just a duffel bag, his laptop, and a heart so heavy it seemed to drag behind him. Every morning, he sat at the kitchen table, staring at his coffee until it went cold. Every night, I heard him pacing in the spare room, wrestling with thoughts he couldn't share yet. I didn't press him. I just made sure he ate, made sure he rested, and when he finally looked me in the eyes again, I smiled. The kind of small, quiet smile that says, "You'll be okay." But peace doesn't come easy when betrayal is still echoing through your life. 3 days later, Jasmine showed up at my doorstep. I almost didn't recognize her. Her hair was unkempt, eyes swollen, the shine in her posture gone. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "Can I speak to Daniel?" I hesitated, then called him. He came out slowly, his expression unreadable. "What do you want, Jasmine?" he asked flatly. I need you to understand. It wasn't supposed to happen this way."
He laughed bitterly. You cheated on me, Jas, for 6 months. What way was it supposed to happen? She stepped forward, desperate. I made a mistake. I was lonely. You were always working and Daniel cut her off. Stop. Don't you dare blame me for your choices. She froze, tears spilling over. I'm sorry, she whispered. Please, don't tell anyone. My parents would... Your parents should know who their daughter really is, he said coldly, and they will. That was the first time I'd ever heard that tone in his voice. Firm, resolved, like steel that had finally hardened after too much heat. Jasmine sobbed harder. You're going to destroy me. No, Daniel said softly. You destroyed us. And then he turned and went back inside, closing the door behind him. I stayed on the porch a moment longer, watching her crumble, mascara streaking down her cheeks, hands shaking as she clutched her purse. A small, cruel part of me wanted to feel satisfaction. This is her karma, that voice whispered. But another part, the part that had lived long enough to know how pain multiplies, felt pity. Because even the guilty have their breaking point. Jasmine, I said quietly, go home. Learn from this. It's too late to fix it, but not too late to change. She looked at me, then really looked at me, and for a second, I saw the truth in her eyes. Regret. Real, aching regret. Then she turned and left. In the small community we lived in, secrets had a way of traveling faster than cars on the main road. Within a week, whispers began. Neighbors noticed Daniel's car parked at my house every night. Someone saw Jasmine crying outside their apartment building. Someone else mentioned seeing her at a cafe with a man who wasn't her husband months ago. And just like that, the story spread, the perfect couple that wasn't so perfect after all.
Daniel didn't speak much during that time, but one evening, he asked me something that caught me off guard. Ma, should I tell her parents? I looked at him carefully. Do you want to? He sighed. Part of me says yes, but another part, I don't know. I just want to move on. I reached over, placing my hand on his. Then move on, son. You don't need to humiliate her to heal yourself. The truth already did that. He nodded, tears forming but not falling. I just can't believe I didn't see it sooner. I smiled sadly. When we love someone, we see who they could be, not who they are. It's both our strength and our weakness. He took a deep breath, as if letting something go. That night, he packed the last of his things from their apartment. Jasmine wasn't there. She'd moved out a few days earlier, apparently to stay with a friend. But what happened next wasn't planned, and it's what truly made everything public. The next morning, my phone buzzed. The old one, the one she mocked. It was Daniel calling. Ma, turn on the TV. I did. The local news was running a segment about a data breach in a marketing firm. They were showing blurred screenshots from leaked internal messages, apparently private exchanges between employees that revealed affairs, unethical deals, and secret relationships. And right there, among the examples, was Jasmine's name, and a few of the messages she'd sent to Evan. My breath caught. It wasn't Daniel. It wasn't me. Someone from her office must have leaked it all. Maybe karma had its own timetable after all. I looked at Daniel, who stood silently in front of the TV, jaw clenched. I didn't do it, he said immediately, turning to me. I swear, Ma, I didn't. I know you didn't, I said gently. The universe did. He nodded slowly, sinking into a chair. She's finished now. Everyone will know. I walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. Then let her face her truth, and you face yours. One day, you'll find peace again. But not if you keep staring back at the wreckage. He looked up at me, eyes tired but softer. You're right. He picked up his phone and, right there, deleted her contact. No yelling, no bitterness. Just quiet closure. In the following weeks, people kept talking.
Friends called to ask if the rumors were true. Family members whispered sympathy. I stayed silent. I didn't defend anyone, and I didn't celebrate anything. Some truths don't need commentary. They just need time to settle into memory. Daniel began to heal. Slowly, yes, but surely. He started running again in the mornings, picked up new work projects, even laughed with me one afternoon over coffee, a sound I hadn't heard in months. One evening, I caught him scrolling through photos of us on my old phone. He smiled and said softly, "You know, Ma, I used to think your phone was outdated, but it's the only thing that never lied." I laughed, tears filling my eyes. That's because it belonged to someone who still believes in truth. He leaned over and hugged me, a long, silent hug that said everything words couldn't. And just like that, the storm that had once threatened to destroy us became a lesson, not about revenge, but about resilience. Sometimes you don't need to fight back. You just need to let the truth stand tall, and it will speak for you. It's strange how quiet life feels after a storm passes. For weeks, I had braced myself for noise, arguments, calls, tears. But what came instead was silence. A peaceful, heavy silence that felt almost sacred. Daniel had started staying home more often. Not because he was broken anymore, but because he was learning how to be still again. Healing has its own rhythm. Slow, uneven, but sure. Some mornings I'd find him sitting on the porch with a cup of tea, just watching the sunrise. Other days, he'd help me in the kitchen, chopping onions badly, but with good intention. One day, as we sat together peeling vegetables, he said quietly, "Ma, I've been thinking a lot about what happened." I nodded. It's hard not to. He looked down at his hands. I realized I was trying so hard to make our marriage look perfect that I didn't notice it was falling apart. I smiled softly. That's what most people do, son. They chase the picture instead of the piece. He chuckled lightly. Yeah, guess I learned that the hard way. He was changing. I could see it. The pain had stripped him down to something raw, honest, and stronger than before. He was quieter, yes, but wiser too. Sometimes I caught glimpses of the boy he used to be, the one who'd run to me with scraped knees, crying until I kissed the pain away. Only now, I couldn't heal him with a kiss. He had to do that himself. And he was doing it, one day at a time. A few weeks later, Jasmine called me. I saw her name flash on the screen and hesitated before answering. "Hello?" I said cautiously. Her voice was small. "Ma, it's me. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I closed my eyes, letting her words sink in. "For everything," she continued. "For the way I treated you. For what I did to Daniel. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say it." Her voice cracked, and for the first time, I heard genuine remorse. Not the kind that comes from fear of exposure, but the kind that comes from understanding what you've lost. I took a deep breath. "Jasmine, what you did hurt my son deeply. It hurt me too. But if you're truly sorry, then I forgive you, not for your sake, but for mine." She was silent for a moment. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means more than you know." "Learn from it," I said softly. "Be better than your worst mistake." "I will," she promised, and the line went dead. I set the phone down and exhaled. The house felt lighter. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened, but it frees the heart from carrying the weight of bitterness. And that day, I decided I'd carried mine long enough. As spring rolled in, life began to bloom again, literally and figuratively. Daniel started working on a new project that took him to another city twice a week. He seemed more alive, more present. Sometimes he'd call just to tell me about a new restaurant he'd tried or a podcast he discovered. "Guess I'm turning into you," he said once, laughing, "finding joy in the little things." "That's the secret, son," I replied. "Happiness hides in the ordinary."
One Sunday, he brought me a small wrapped box. "Go on, open it," he said, smiling. Inside was a brand new phone, sleek, simple, but modern. "Daniel," I laughed, "you didn't have to." "I did," he said, "but not to replace your old one. I transferred everything, the photos, the voicemails, the recipes. You'll still have all your memories. I just thought you deserved something that works a little faster." I smiled, touched by the gesture. "You know, Jasmine once said this old thing was embarrassing for you." He looked at me, his expression gentle. "She was wrong, Ma. You've never embarrassed me. You've only ever made me proud." For a long time, I didn't say anything. I just hugged him, long, tight, and full of quiet gratitude. That evening, I sat by my window with my tea, watching the sky turn gold and pink. My new phone rested beside me, the old one tucked safely away in a drawer. I couldn't bring myself to throw it out. That phone, that outdated relic, had seen the truth when people didn't. It had been the key to uncovering deceit, the bridge between heartbreak and healing. Sometimes the smallest things hold the greatest power. I thought about Jasmine then, where she might be, how she might be coping. A part of me hoped she was finding her own kind of peace. Because even when people wrong us, wishing them misery doesn't make our pain smaller. Only forgiveness does that. And I had chosen forgiveness, not because she deserved it, but because I did. Weeks turned into months. Life steadied. The cracks slowly sealed into scars, still visible, but no longer bleeding. Daniel started smiling again, genuinely this time. Sometimes he'd even joke about learning to cook, though I knew he still burned toast. We began hosting small dinners again, the way we used to before everything fell apart. One evening, after everyone left, he said, "You know, Ma, I used to think you were old-fashioned, but maybe the old ways aren't so bad. The patience, the kindness, the honesty." I smiled knowingly. "They're not bad, son. They just take longer. But they last." He nodded. "Yeah, I think I finally get that."
We sat in silence for a while after that, the good kind of silence, the kind that doesn't need words. And as I looked at him, older, wiser, calmer, I realized something beautiful. Pain doesn't just break us, it shapes us. It chisels away everything false until only the truth remains. And in that truth, we find who we really are. That night, as I got ready for bed, I found myself holding the old phone again. Its screen was cracked, the casing faded, but when I turned it on, it still lit up, just like it used to. There were old photos on it. Daniel as a boy, my late husband smiling in the garden, even Jasmine during the early days when she first joined our family. She looked so happy then, her eyes full of light. I lingered on one picture, the three of us standing by the old oak tree, the same tree that still stood outside my kitchen window. I remembered that day. It was warm, full of laughter and plans for the future. None of us knew what storms were coming. I closed the photo and whispered to myself, maybe that's what life really is, a collection of moments before and after we learn the truth. Sometimes the truth hurts. Sometimes it saves us. And sometimes it hides in the very thing someone mocks us for. If Jasmine hadn't laughed at my phone, I might never have found those messages. I might never have known the truth. But fate has a strange sense of humor. It uses the small, ordinary things, a phone, a message, a moment of pride, to reveal what's been hiding in plain sight. I put the phone down, turned off the light, and whispered a prayer. Not for revenge, not for regret, but for peace. Peace for my son. Peace for myself. And yes, peace for her too. Because in the end, what we give out always finds its way back. And forgiveness, no matter how hard, is the only thing that truly sets us free. You know, sometimes the people who laugh at us aren't mocking what's old. They're just afraid of what they can't control. My daughter-in-law thought my phone made me small, outdated, even irrelevant. But it turned out that the same thing she mocked was the thing that showed me the truth she'd been hiding. Life has a way of humbling us like that. So I've learned to never be ashamed of what others find less than, whether it's an old phone, a quiet nature, or a kind heart. Those things carry a power that noise can never match. And as for me, I don't need to prove my worth through gadgets or appearances. My peace, my integrity, those are enough. Would you have forgiven her if you were in my place? Tell me in the comments. And if you believe that karma always finds its way home, don't forget to subscribe and stay for the next story. Because in this house, every story holds a lesson, and every lesson finds its voice.